This is the Balance Dilemma. We tackle the often uniquely, but not always, female dilemma, managing life, work, family, and self. I'm Maura, Carlin.
And I'm Christie, Derrico. At the Balance Dilemma, we speak with women and men to hear their balanced stories. Our guests are entrepreneurs, reinventors, creators, executives, parents, and partners, telling us what we really want to know. How the heck did they manage that? And can you have it all and all at the same time?
We are talking pivots and saying yes, and perhaps when not to say yes, with our guest, Melissa Andrieux. Melissa's become a really good friend of the Balance Dilemma and a supporter, and we met her in the course of a panel discussion we hosted about 2 years ago, discussing work-life balance and choices. Melissa is a former assistant district attorney in Queens, New York, and she switched to private practice in civil litigation, first in New York City and Long Island, and then to Westchester with the firm now known as Dorf, Nelson, and Zauderer. And so in another pivot, though, combined with need and opportunity, Melissa's become the firm's DEI officer, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she's become a sought-after speaker and voice in that field. So, Melissa, we are thrilled to welcome you and finally have this official sit down.
Thank you, Maura and Christie, for having me. I'm really excited to be on the program today.
So you have an interesting background. You grew up in Queens in one of the boroughs in New York, and your dad worked in an accounting department and also drove a cab, and your mom worked in a bank. Were you always expected to be a professional? What were the goals that your parents set up for you?
Well, back then, they never really had the conversation of you were going to be a professional. It was just kind of expected, just by the nature of the Haitian culture.
What is that culture?
The culture is, the more money you make, the more your status is in the community.
So it is money.
It was money. And, for the parents to brag to their friends that their kids are a lawyer, a doctor. So it's that's the culture mentality that I grew up in. So I always expected to be a lawyer or a doctor or something professional.
So how did it end up that you became a lawyer?
Kind of just happenstance and just watching TV. I was really into the law shows, particularly the criminal shows. And like I told you, I fell in love with The Practice. And
who was that actress on The Practice?
Lara Flynn Boyle.
Oh, how could I forget?
Also known as Melissa Andrieux.
So she was kind of my it. I wanted to be like her, representing the government, and I chose to be a prosecutor just like that character. And when I got into the district attorney's office, I modeled myself after her. I dressed like her. I wore my hair in a ponytail like her. And I just gravitated toward that life.
Now, I have a question. So your parents were both from Haiti?
Correct.
And you have that culture, and then you're here in the United States being an American kid. And how did that factor into the Melissa we have sitting with us today?
Well, I'm thankful that I have this background, this culture, and I have multiple languages that I speak. So it was difficult growing up a little bit because they were a little bit strict, but my parents shaped me, and I became the person that I am because of them. My father, he was an accountant, but I didn't know him as that. He was always a yellow cab driver since at least the time that I was born. And he instilled in us, working hard. He would work 7 days a week, come home past midnight, and we would hardly see him. My mom worked also. And, it was just that drive to take care of your family. And that's what I saw.
So is that hard work ethic?
Hard work ethic.
For money?
For money, and to be able to take care of your family, and just to be a good person in the community, give back when you can.
And the same goals were expected of you as they were for your brothers?
Yes, they were. I was the first to go to law school, and my two brothers, even though I kind of told them don't do it, they both did it. So there are 3 lawyers in our family. And my father, who's no longer with us, he was very proud of the fact that he had 3 lawyers in the family, always bragging.
Were the expectations, if not of your parents, of the community, different for you than your brothers? Was it like, why is she going to be a lawyer? Or were they all supportive?
Everybody was supportive. I mean, friends and family were supportive. The people in the neighborhood, they thought that I was kind of uppity, but and that got me into trouble a little bit. But I didn't care. I never hung out with them. I always knew what I wanted to do, and I geared my life. I was focused, laser focused. School, school, school.
And you lived the life that you were imagining, the real life version of the practice as an ADA in a city jurisdiction. Where'd you get your first job? Tell us about that.
So the Queens District Attorney's Office. Growing up in Queens, I said, well, I want to be a Queens prosecutor. And that's what I did. I landed myself an internship first, kind of my way in, my foot into the door. And then I ensconced myself in the culture. And when it came time to get a real job, I applied and got a position as an ADA.
And did it match your expectations of the practice?
Not so much. TV is different than real life, but it was a real learning experience. I was in front of a judge every single day. We were on the record making arguments. I did jury trials, so I picked a lot of juries. It was fun, and it was, wearing the white hat. We were representing the government and putting the bad guys away.
Now, being an assistant district attorney, and particularly anywhere in New York City, that's a tough job and requires the lawyer to be tough. Were you up to it? How did you feel in that role?
Well, I'm not a tough person per se. I think you have to be yourself in life, and particularly with juries, because if they see that you're being fake, they're not going to respond to you. So I was always me, and I'm not a tough, quote unquote, person. I did my job. The facts were the facts, can't make them up. And I did what I had to do. And I won a lot of my cases too.
Yeah. And the cases you were trying, I understand, were in narcotics. Yeah. That's not an easy area.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It wasn't easy because, in Queens, a lot of the cases came from Jamaica, South Jamaica. And a lot of the defendants were men of color. And, I always wondered in front of the jury's eyes what they were thinking, seeing a Black prosecutor trying to put away a Black man. But then I realized that they understand the process. They understand that I have a job to do. It's not anything personal. And like I said, I did win a lot of my cases. So I guess they believed, what I had to put before them.
And at some point you decided to switch to civil litigation, as many prosecutors do. You went to a firm in Manhattan, and then you've moved around with that. Yeah. But you went to do civil litigation. What brought that on?
Well, at that point in my career, I wanted to make a little bit more money, and it wasn't really happening at the DA's office. And I had kind of lost the love of what I was doing. So I figured, let me do something else, get more experience under my belt. And I ended up doing defense litigation for a firm for 12 years before moving to Westchester with Dorf, Nelson, and Zauderer.
And you moved with one of the partners from that former firm, so you had a mentor.
I had a mentor. If I did not have him in my corner, I don't think there's any way I could have made it through that firm. He really took me under his wing and taught me how to write, how to communicate with actual clients. And he left that firm and came to Dorf, Nelson, and Zauderer, and I followed him because I really wanted to continue working with him.
Sometimes it takes those little guardian angels. So you hit a stumbling block at some point, a dilemma of sorts a few years ago. Tell us about that. What happened?
So even before I made the move to Dorf Nelson, I had been wanting something else in my career. I just didn't know what it was. And I really befriended Jonathan Nelson, and we would just talk about career and whatever was going on in life. And I mentioned to him that I really wasn't feeling the medical malpractice defense litigation anymore. And so we tried commercial litigation. I didn't like that because it was litigation. And then one day he says, there's an opening in the marketing department. So I said, okay, well, I've never done marketing. No, thank you. And then as time went on, I kept thinking to myself, you don't want to die. I know it's dire, die doing something that you don't enjoy. And he always said, if this doesn't work out, you'll always have a place at the firm. So I ended up doing the switch to the marketing department.
And wasn't there, something with a family member who also needed help that was causing you pause about what you were doing?
So after I took the marketing position and the business development that developed thereafter, I was kind of getting in the groove of what I was doing because I had never done BD or marketing before.
What is BD?
Business development. And my mom got sick, and I was kind of trying to balance work and home, and I really couldn't do it. I was struggling so much. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to quit this job because they're never gonna let me take time off because I just started, we're getting in the groove. And I went and spoke to John Dorf and John Nelson. I explained the situation. And to my surprise, although I shouldn't be surprised, they said, take 2 weeks off. No, I said, let me have 2 weeks off. And they said, take 30 days.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So what did that tell you about the power of advocating for your own needs?
Well, it told me that I should do it and not be scared, because what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, and then you address it at that point. But I realized that these two men were really in my corner, and they cared about me on a personal level. They wanted me to be okay. And at that point, I was not okay. I needed that time off.
So do you think that this was because you had a special audience of bosses? And where I'm really getting is you have been very fortunate, whether by intent or circumstance, to have these male mentors who have really taken you under their wing. And I will say that that event that you spoke at, the first one, both Dorf and Nelson attended to support you, which I still think about. That was really quite impressive.
Yeah, they've been in my corner, particularly John Nelson. He was really pushing me, and he served as a mentor to me with respect to learning this new career that I was embarking on, the marketing and the business development and just networking. Then Dorf came into my life more consistently, and I went out with him and learned how he went out into the world. And it was just like magic. It just happened. I've been really fortunate in my life with having these men as my mentors.
So we had another guest, Rachel O'Mara, who wrote a book called Pause, and she was given a pause at Google that ended up sending her on a whole new direction that was in her best interest. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you had a pause. What happened during those 30 days? Did you get clarity? How did you come out of it?
Well, I took care of what I needed to do at home, which I needed to focus on, and I was able to do that. And then when I came back to work, I was just rejuvenated and ready to hit the ground running. So because I didn't have to focus on work and home, I was just able to focus on home. And the rest is history, I guess.
So you started in this BD and doing marketing.
Yeah.
Did that transition into something else? Tell us what happened.
It did. So business development, you go out, you network, and I was just meeting a lot of new people and learning what's going on in Westchester. And at that time, we had also the racial justice issues going on. And DEI was such an important topic at that point in time. And I looked internally as to what was going on at the firm. And I went to leadership. I said, hey, what do you think about making this more of a focus within the firm? DEI within the firm. And we started doing that. And then after I did the panel with you all, it kind of snowballed into my getting asked to do other speaking engagements.
I mean, we should mention that part of that panel had to do with gender fair, with which the law firm had become certified as a certified gender fair company, yes, which deals with women-related issues.
And just for our listeners, this is a conversation we've had off air. Talk to us about DEI. What is it? What part of the law? What aspect of a law firm deals with DEI? And tell us how it works and what it's led to.
So, for those who don't know, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now we've added the B, belonging, which goes hand in hand with inclusion. So I won't take time and define what they mean, but basically it's leveling the playing field for everyone, not just women, not just people of color. DEI benefits everyone within an organization. And we felt that, yes, the firm was gender fair certified, so they were really advocating for women and supporting women, but let's take it a step further. And so we started our DEI initiatives, and they told me, run with it. This is your thing. You go, we support you 100%. And that's what I've done. And it's not only just about outside, what we're doing outside of the firm, it's within the firm, because the employees need to feel included, that they belong. And so we do things within the firm that I won't speak about, but,
And as far as generating business, which this is a law firm that you're working for, businesses need DEI programs too. Has this been part of what you've been doing?
So yes, I did spin this into a little company called DEIB Consulting. So I consult with firm clients or people have reached out to me and retained my services, and I help them out with their DEI initiatives. I do presentations, I do programming, and there's such a need for it, particularly companies that have never done DEI related work. They just need the guidance, and I love helping those companies.
Well, and you're really a good face for this because due to their faith in you and helping you handle this personal situation, they've retained you, and you are, a treasure of an employee with lots of skills.
But I'd like to make a little pivot right now.
Yes.
Okay. To talk about maybe some of the apprehensions that you had when you made your own pivot, like it was something you hadn't done before. Did you experience what they call imposter syndrome?
Oh, yes, I did.
Can you tell us about that?
I still experience it a little bit. I always saw myself as this particular person, this particular individual, which was lawyer, introvert, didn't need to talk to anybody, just bill your hours. And then when I did the pivot and I started going out into the world and I found that people actually liked me, I was like, is this me that they're really gravitating towards? Or is this just somebody else that they think that I am? And I struggled with, I guess, the two sides of Melissa. And I spoke to someone and they said, you could evolve. You've evolved. So you're what you were back then and you are what you are now. So I still have the imposter syndrome, but I'm getting over it slowly but surely.
Do you have advice for others of how to get over it? Go ahead.
Good question.
How do you get over it? I think you just have to have the internal conversations with yourself and allow yourself to have multiple personalities, which is honestly what I have sometimes to get through the day in the life. But just consistently have conversations with yourself, and it's okay to have these issues, these challenges. We all have imposter syndrome. We may not admit it, but I think everybody to a certain extent has it.
It's about the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves.
Yes. I had a story I told myself for a very long time, and it's taking me a very long time to get out of that story.
But you still get nervous, like even coming into our studio, you get nervous in front of running panels.
Of course
What do you?
But you'd never know it looking at her, but go ahead.
Well, you wouldn't be liked, right? So I always, I struggle with how I speak. Like I try to speak like a normal person. I say like a lot, which is annoying. But I do get nervous. I move my hands a lot, and sometimes you don't know how to be because this is kind of still new to me, this interview type thing and speaking in public, which, by the way, I never enjoyed doing, even though as
For a trial attorney?
Yes.
That seems to have changed.
Even as a trial attorney, I was scared going up before the jury. I always had the podium as my security blanket. Yeah.
So is there something that you do to make yourself feel bolder, braver, or more professional? I mean, I've talked about this before on the show that I wear very high heels when I'm doing an
Let's
interview.
see. So put them
I
for
don't
the
know
camera.
if you can.
Love it.
I don't know if you all can see it. Here we go.
There we go.
Love it.
So they're sitting shoes, however, not walking shoes. Is there something that you do?
Not really, but I do talk to myself and I say, it's going to be okay. They've invited you to this program or this event, so they must want to hear from you.
You belong.
I belong. So just do your thing, be you. And that's how I get through everything. And people respond to it.
From an outside observer, another component you may not be aware of, you surround yourself with good people.
Yep.
And being in a place where you're respected and they want you for your skills that you didn't even know you had, but they saw.
Yeah.
Really, I think you have a subconscious navigation system that brought you to that spot.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Look at that.
You're right. Honestly, I got lucky. Thank God.
Well, that's a whole different discussion, whether you make luck or it just happens. Yeah. But let's talk balance issues. This is the balance dilemma. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that comes up a lot is just because you don't have children doesn't mean you don't have family and other obligations. Can you talk about that? Because people often are pitted against each other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do not have children yet. And I do feel that sometimes it's expected that I participate in an event because I don't have children, whereas the women with children might get a pass. And I mean, that's really not the case. That's what's going on in my internal mind. But, women without children, we need our me time too. We need a break from everything. I like to just veg and watch TV, play with my brother's dog. Like, I don't want to be working 24/7 just because I don't have children. I got to take care of myself too.
Well, do you see, what you read on Reddit, people complaining, my coworker's going on maternity leave and I've got to pick up the slack, and people are resentful of that?
So I've never seen that at any of the firms that I've worked at, luckily. Maybe people are thinking it internally, but I've never heard it voiced. I've never thought that personally. You're having a kid, you need time off. And personally, I think they should get more time off than they already have, but I've never had that issue.
But you also mentioned to me that this new job that you are doing, it requires, sorry, a lot of late night hours, and your reserves can get so low that you're exhausted.
Yep.
So that's something that you've had to be careful with self-care.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
And
while I
saying
choke.
no. And saying no to certain things. Yeah, so with, the business development that I do, traveling for my speaking engagements, late nights networking, you get run down. And luckily, John, and Mark Zauderer, they understand that. So I do have some balance where I can make my own schedule when I do have events that make me work late into the night. So I'm really thankful for that too. I don't know if that answers the question. Self-care, what I do, honestly, I go to the gym. I've made it a point to take care of myself and just really try and balance everything.
Well, I should mention that in addition to your Dorf, Nelson, and Zauderer positions, you are the ambassador to the Business Council of Westchester. You're a board member of the Westchester Women's Bar Association and a co-chair of the Westchester Women's Bar Association DEI committee.
Yeah.
And you attend a lot of Balanced Dilemma events.
I do. I love
among
them.
others. So, as Christie said, you are out a lot. How do you decide when to say yes and when to say no? And we will tell you tell people that we attended a workshop that you ran at the Westchester Women's Summit about the dilemma of saying yes. I probably said that wrong, but it's the yes dilemma.
Yep. Good question. So I am out a lot, and that's because I do not know how to say no. I'm learning to say no, but everything for me is yes, 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 because of FOMO, fear of missing out. And I still have that, but this year I made a conscious decision to not say yes to everything. Just last night I didn't go to an event because I was exhausted. So it's tough because as women, we want to not be forgotten. We want to please everyone. And I'm like that as well. And so I just keep saying yes to everything to my detriment.
So how does this work in actual application? Speaking for myself, I might try to not be out more than one night a week or 2 nights a week. Do you pick a number of nights you're going to be out, or do you look at the schedule and see how you feel?
I look at the schedule, excuse me, and I see how I feel. More often than not, I enjoy going out. I love networking and meeting people. And when I do say yes, it's because I really want to go to the event. But there are times where I'm double booked. I keep double booking myself. And that's the times that I say, no, you have to beg out of this event. And that's how I do it.
Or get a clone.
Or get a clone.
Yeah, I know.
Is there guilt?
2 of me.
Is there guilt when you say no?
There is guilt. There's guilt and FOMO. Yeah, like I always think that, if I don't go to this event, I might miss this connection, this business opportunity, meeting someone. And then I just got to get over it because if I'm run down, I'm no good to anyone.
It was interesting. Just today, there was a LinkedIn article about having confidence in saying no. Now, it was pitched towards someone who was asked to work for free for exposure, but it really can apply in any circumstance that, you have to, it takes some degree of confidence to say, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, there's also the art in saying no that we can
Yes.
all agree. You don't want to insult someone or make it seem like one is more important to the other, which leads to the double booking and finding it hard to say no. But tell us about putting the phone down as part of your prioritizing. What does that mean to you?
I'm not very good at that, candidly. I'm not. That's something that I'm learning to do. I'm always on my phone. I'm always checking social media, always checking emails. Because as a lawyer, you have to be responsive to clients, right? And
It's a service industry.
It's a service industry. Even though I'm not dealing with clients per se, I still want to be responsive to, let's say, a prospective client. Or if somebody has a question, I like to answer ASAP. I'm not one that likes to wait.
It's a real
So
problem
it's
in our
difficult.
industry.
Yeah, it's difficult to just disconnect, particularly since we have our emails on our phone, you have it on your iPad, it's just everywhere. So I'm really trying to say 9 o'clock, done.
And do
That's
you
what I'm
leave
doing.
it out of the room? Do you sleep with the phone as your morning alarm? Or
It's next to my bed, but it's off. I turn it
All
off. I
right,
shut
that's
it off.
good.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to prioritize? Do you count how many people you might meet at this event as opposed to another? I mean, how does one prioritize?
I prioritize based on, I guess, the importance of, let's say, an event that I need to attend. Is it something for Business Council of Westchester? I'm an ambassador, so I would prioritize that over something else. If it's not got nothing to do with BCW, then if it's a speaking engagement that's out of town and I've committed to it, obviously I'm going to do it. But I really just, it's in my head. I don't know. There's really no science for me.
So social media presence, because you have a big footprint right now. No, I love seeing your pictures. You're very photogenic. They're adorable. Does that help you or raise it to a standard that you feel like you have to work harder to achieve that image? Sometimes you can post something and it looks like you're busy and maybe you make it a light week.
Right.
How does that work for you?
Well, I'm of the mind that you have to post to keep top of mind. My challenge is over posting, which I don't want to do, but I like to let people know what I'm doing, particularly if it helps them as well. But social media is addictive. And before I did my pivot to marketing, I never engaged in social media. I saw no need for it, but there is. It's
an important part of business nowadays.
It's important. People
It
reach
is.
out to you, and that's how they get to know you and the firm and whatever you're doing.
And one of the things, and you seem to have mastered this, which is very difficult, being yourself on social media. We all know we see pictures of people living their best lives,
Right.
but we don't see the real life. And you seem to have managed that. How?
I think it's because I'm genuinely happy doing what I do. I'm not a good actress. I can't fake it. I mean, I don't have a poker face. I've been told that by many people, including a court officer at Queens Criminal Court, by the way. I think you just have to be yourself and that people will see that. It'll translate through your pictures and what you're posting. And I really think you can't fake it. You really can't.
So I have a question. You've been a lawyer for how many years now?
Since 03.
Don't make her
Wow.
answer that.
No, I think it shows she has a long career. Like, I think she's, in any event, if you had to give advice to your college-age self, looking at the career that you've had and where it's taken you, what kind of advice would you give?
I would tell my college-age self to expand your horizons and not be afraid. Don't pigeonhole yourself, because that's what I did. I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. I want to do criminal. And that was the path that I followed, to the exclusion of everything else. And it wasn't until later in life where I learned that there's so many other possibilities out there. With a law degree, you could do whatever the heck you want. And I didn't realize that. So I would have told myself, go out, network, which I never did back then, and expand your horizons. Don't be so laser focused on one thing.
And it's never too late.
And it's never too late.
So what does balance mean to you?
Balance means, just being happy, being content, and just, for me, if I spend time with my mom and my family on the days that I'm working, that's balance for me. Even if it's not a long conversation, as long as I see her, I lay eyes on her, that's balance for me. The days where I don't have any interaction with her, that is like not good for me.
Can you have it all and all at the same time?
I don't think so.
You can say it loudly. You
I
have to
don't think
whisper
so.
it.
I don't think so. I think, no, I don't. And the people that do, I think they're doing it for the wrong reasons. The people who try to have it all, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Maybe to have this persona, to have people think something of them. I just don't think it's possible.
Well, speaking candidly, having watched you go through this pivot, you are looking very happy and you're really killing it. So good job.
Thank you.
Happy for you.
And we were thrilled to finally get this formal sit down with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have all the information about Melissa in our show notes when this posts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love the studio.
Oh, before we wrap, let me just say thank you. Speaking of the studio, to LMC Media Productions, because the studio really is fabulous. And anyone looking to do any kind of production should really reach out. You can even book space on your own. You go to lmcmedia.org/services/podcasts, and you can book time to use the studio. Also, of course, this is a non-for-profit organization, and they'd be happy to take your money. So feel free to donate, and that is lmcmedia.org/donate.
Please follow us, listen to us, and rate us on our platforms, Spotify, Apple, and our website, thebalanceddilemma.com, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter and email us your suggestions. There's no cost, but it means a lot to us.